Democrats are under a lot of pressure from constituents to support a ceasefire in Gaza. This is as the death toll climbs into the tens of thousands. Even after President Joe Biden had answered a question about the chances of a ceasefire by saying, quote, none, no possibility. People were not wanting to let up on members of Congress. In fact, according to a recent piece in HuffPost, staffers from 24 Democratic offices say that they're receiving an unprecedented number of calls and emails demanding for members to support a ceasefire. In fact, that is something that they were not at all expecting. The prevailing guidance in several offices, in fact, according to one staffer, was, oh, these calls, let them go to voicemail. Oh, isn't that nice? We're just not going to listen to our constituents at all. Great. Another aide said of the Democrats' disappointing response on this, quote, this building is not listening. I've never seen such a disconnect between where the voters and constituents are and where Congress is. And that's saying something because there's always a disconnect. Well, I mean, when you have polling like this, then yeah, here you have 80% of Democrats saying, let's do a ceasefire, 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 okay? Hell, you even have a majority of Republicans saying, yeah, ceasefire, 56%. Yet, Democratic politicians on this issue have just completely failed to listen to the people they're supposed to listen to, their constituents. In fact, John Fetterman, who, look, I supported John Fetterman. He literally laughed and waved an Israeli flag at a veteran who was getting arrested for protesting the slaughter of Palestinian children. So, yeah, John Fetterman lost my support, has lost a lot of support among constituents, among people on the left, progressives, and this is happening to, by the way, a lot of our politicians, because not many of them have spoke out. Now, the article notes that the deluge of calls has produced only mixed results, if any, leading for some to call for some sort of milquetoasty, we need a humanitarian pause. Just a humanitarian pause between, the bombings, the carpet bombings of the area. One staffer said, it's cold comfort, but even if members are not speaking up for a ceasefire, the calls and the letters are making a difference. Not that big of one, though. Quote, they're changing the calculations of how far some members are willing to go to support Israel. Well, now here's the thing, right? So the way that I see it is they're supporting the Jewish people and fighting against anti-Semitism, which unfortunately has risen as a result of this, right? Speaking up for the Jewish people, speaking out against anti-Semitism, and wanting the hostages, by the way, to be returned safely, and, for there to be safety for the people inside Israel, as well as for the people outside of Israel. As a leftist, I want all those things, okay? That's one thing. The other thing is what you're seeing members of Congress do, which is supporting the right-wing government of Israel that has been doing human rights abuses and now war crimes in which our government is complicit in. Our taxpayer money is going to. I do not want that. And most Democrats, hell, most of the country, over half, the 2/3, don't want this. We do not want this. We do not want what's going on in Israel, in Gaza, to be happening. So right now, Palestinians live in an open-air prison. They have no rights. No, none. They have to go through armed checkpoints if they want to travel at all. Massive unemployment. They don't even have guaranteed access to clean water. They rely on, when it comes to, food getting in, the international community. And so when you have those conditions that are filled with hopelessness and despair, you shouldn't be surprised that if you oppress a people for so long that they lash out and innocent people end up getting killed. And that's horrifying. It's horrible that Israeli civilians have been killed. It's horrible that Palestinian civilians have been killed on scales that are just grossly disproportionate, by the way. And yet our government continues to refuse to back the one thing that will end the killing. even for a short time, and that would be a ceasefire. But, of course, when you raise these points, the common refrain is, well, Hamas doesn't want a ceasefire. I mean, they break out the ceasefires. Actually, not really. Oftentimes, it's the Israeli government that breaks these ceasefires by bombing Al-Aqsa, for example, that kind of stuff. And so not only that, but speaking of who wants a ceasefire, well, it turns out that Palestinians, these militant groups, have tried to reach out to the Israeli government to offer not only a ceasefire, but also to release hostages in exchange for short-term ceasefires. And according to sources, it happens to be Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu who have rejected these offers. In fact, sources said the Israeli Prime Minister had rejected a deal outright in negotiations soon after Hamas militants staged their incursion into Israeli territory on October 7th, which killed an estimated 1,400 people. Negotiations resumed after the launch of the Israeli ground offensive on October 27th. However, the same sources say that Netanyahu had continued to take a tough line of proposals involving ceasefires of different durations in exchange for a varying number of hostages. According to 3 sources familiar with the talks, the original deal on the table involved freeing children, women, and elderly and sick people in exchange for a 5-day ceasefire. The Israeli government turned it down and demonstrated the rejection by launching an invasion ground offensive into Gaza. So, I don't know, it looks like that if anybody's keeping this war going, it's the Israeli government that's backed by our government with our money. So, I mean, both governments don't seem to care about the wishes of the people. In fact, one staff member said, and this is back to congressional staffers, this is the most I've ever seen people unified behind an issue and actively calling. Their office is one of many where staffers say calls for a ceasefire outnumber support for aid to Israel many times over. This is very unprecedented, the staffer said. The phone doesn't stop ringing at any point in the day. Now, the party's response has left a lot of these staffers demoralized. Many whose daily job it is to speak with constituents and senior staff say the senior staff have been handing out talking points that minimize the death toll in Gaza, or that seem designed to confuse callers about where their representative actually stands. In fact, one staffer said of a lawmaker they work for, all his statements are so vague and full of inaccessible jargon that we don't know what his true stance is. In one congresswoman's office, staff said that they're being told to claim that she supports a humanitarian pause, even though she's never actually said that. Never actually openly said that position. Another office sent out automated response that states the death toll in Gaza is only 3,000. That estimate, of course, is 3 weeks out of date, and thousands shy of the real figures. In fact, nearly 11,000 people have been reported dead, 4,000 of them children. So, yeah. Now, another staffer said that it did not occur to her superiors that some constituents would have personal ties to Gaza, which she realized when a caller said the bombardment had just killed most of his friend's family. The statement we're authorized to use doesn't contain any sympathy, the staffer said. It isn't part of any statement to say, I'm so sorry that happened to you. She went off script to tell the caller she was sorry. And there's a video out there of Elizabeth Warren being confronted by someone who, again, has personal ties to people in Gaza that have been killed, and she just runs away. Doesn't address it at all. No sympathy. No understanding whatsoever. Oh my God, I can't believe that the people that are in this country might have any ties to people in Gaza. Oh no, I couldn't imagine. But they do. They do. So now the staffers even noted how this could have some pretty big negative impacts for re-election, which apparently, I mean, you would think that if they were care about one thing, it would be like, oh, well, I want to be reelected, so at least maybe I have to, start listening to what the constituents say. No. In fact, an astounding number of callers said that they're committed to never voting for their member again unless they support a ceasefire. And we see polling from that. For example, Michigan, you have a very large Muslim demographic in, for example, Dearborn, Detroit, etc. And yet, you have politicians that are ignoring this. You have a Biden that's ignoring this, who could lose a large amount of Muslim voters just in this stance alone. And not just Muslim voters, but people with conscience. And so, look, some constituents had even promised to go further and mobilize their friends and neighbors to vote not for them, but against them. Now, the politicians, according to the staffers, however, are not at all listening. In fact, some of the responses were, well, they weren't going to vote for me anyway, one lawmaker said. And after an aide in another office gave their member a similar warning, a superior ended up pulling them aside and yelling at them for bringing it to the member's attention. Members and other senior aides and other offices are also telling staff that what seems like a lot of people, it's just a small group of people that are calling repeatedly. Oh, don't worry about them. It's just a tiny amount of people. Don't worry about it. This is special interest. Oh, really? Oh, really? And not only that, but some aides working for lawmakers opposed to a ceasefire say that their superiors have warned them not to contradict their bosses on social media. And it gets worse. The aide of a member known for taking principled, unpopular votes, and who usually invites frank debates among staff, said this member is uncharacteristically quiet about this, and that he talks with just a few advisors, top advisors. And the article notes that the disconnect between the silence that's imposed and the outrage of constituents and staffers like yourself is uncanny. Quote, we're being asked to pretend that every day is a normal day in the office. Just a normal day. Just average. It's fine. Oh, so what? Children are being slaughtered by the hundreds. Innocent people. It's fine. Just an average day. No. Meanwhile, anyone who answers the phones can see that actually not an average day. We're listening to these people that are against this war, that are against the slaughter, that sometimes have lost family members, friends, etc. And they say that the phone rings every 5 minutes. And yet the lawmaker they work for believes the outrage is only starting to die down, which is not true. In fact, according to the staffer, the callers are actually growing more diverse in age, identity, and party affiliation. Well, that's because we can see what's going on. We can see with our own eyes what's happening. You can see the slaughter. And of course, it's heartbreaking what's going on. Now, one staffer, one senior advisor said the pressure is going to continue to mount, and these members are going to have to figure out how to reposture themselves because their positions are not sustainable. Every day, this conflict looks more grotesque, more visibly catastrophic. And one staff member says, there's a real feeling of being complicit. We, that is Congress, are being instrumental in the ability of Israel to wipe Palestine off the face of the earth. Yeah. Many of them are taking to, going to social media anonymously to air their concerns. One contributor wrote, in the midst of all the uproar, the office is calm, as if everyone is walking on eggshells when there are literal war crimes happening with the help of the U.S. government. Now, those are the ones that are anonymous. Others, such as the 100 staffers who staged a walkout outside of the House of Representatives, they took action, but inside the building, that's had no effect. And one of the reasons stated is because of AIPAC, which is a lobbying group that fronts the right-wing Israeli government and gives a lot of money to politicians. Again, they give a lot of money to Democrats that are conservative Democrats that are pro-Israel Democrats that will continue to vote to fund the war machine and turn a blind eye to what they're doing to the Palestinian people. Now, this lobbying group has spent a lot of money to defeat progressives and even people who are ostensibly pro-Israel, but not pro-Israel enough. Not, for example, not pro-war crime enough. For example, AIPAC poured $4 million into an effort to unseat a self-described Zionist named Andy Levin in Michigan. Why? Because he had the audacity to oppose the demolition of Palestinian homes in the West Bank. The West Bank, there is no Hamas in the West Bank. And yet, if you oppose the bulldozing of Palestinian homes to make way for settlers, that's enough. That's too much. Levin lost his primary. And so the others, they look at this, they see what's going on, and they go, oh, no, wow, rock the boat. I don't think so. Not going to happen. I don't want to lose my election. In fact, the Democratic aide said members see members who step out of line lose their elections. They also note that if only, 24 members are for a ceasefire, and even Bernie Sanders won't say the word, maybe we should just go with the pack. That's the calculation. Look, Bernie Sanders, you know how much I like Bernie Sanders, right? But he is completely wrong to not call for a ceasefire. What happened? When leadership is needed badly, he's not there. And it's disappointing. It's so incredibly disappointing. And then to see Democrats vote to censure Representative Rashida Tlaib, who's, the only Palestinian, American in Congress, for speaking up against the slaughter. I mean, it's depressing. One staffer told HuffPost in this article, I just wish a congresswoman, whoever that congresswoman is, could just listen to these calls for one day. Well, it's one thing to listen to them, which obviously you're not doing. It would be another to actually do the right thing. Calling for a ceasefire isn't calling to support Hamas. Calling for a ceasefire is not aiding the terrorists. Okay? Calling for a ceasefire means ending the deaths of innocent people, children. That's what that's about. Ending the ceasefire means trying to bring back the hostages unharmed. That's what a ceasefire is. And it's for laying the groundwork for a more permanent solution, which would be to have Israelis and Palestinians living side by side, both with voices in their government, self-determination, freedom, liberty, safety. That's what we want for both. And it's going to be difficult to get there. But our government's not even trying. And it has so much leverage to be able to do so. Look, the representatives, massively out of step with the voters, with the people, and are unfortunately working with the right wing, both here and in Israel. And that's not a good place to be. And so they really need to massively rethink their positions. Because even as that staffer said, it's untenable, unsustainable. You can't just ignore what's going on and refuse to do the actual work of trying to foster some sort of lasting peace.